division nowadays, everybody's trying to get our act together with the Tea Party.
Sure.
We're trying to make a difference. But back in the 1860s, there's a story that often gets overlooked, but I think it's key to point out. The elite had a plan in the South, and I haven't put all of it together, but it is a bit of a conspiracy, but it's not really a conspiracy because it happened. The area that I live in, and I assume it's throughout the South, as Sherman moved through, the elite back then, as far as like Freemasonry, that was basically an organization that the elite were a member of. It's not like today where, lots of people are in the lodge. It was a very secretive, very elitist organization. As Sherman moved through the South, and if they put a robe out front, on the front porch, and it had the Masonic emblem, the compass and the square, the house was passed on. Unfortunately for most folks, they were not a member of this organization. They were just regular farmers that might have owned 10 or 12 slaves. The owners of the plantation worked right out there in the fields with the slaves, set the example, led by example. It's not right to own people, but I'm trying to give people a perspective. As the war drug on, General Joseph Johnston, Sherman, they met. Sherman was the highest-ranking member of, I believe it's the Lodge in Ohio, and it almost looks like they said, look, we don't want all these people coming back here. They're going to be armed. You've won the war. We're going to free the slaves. It's going to happen. Let's prolong this thing for about 6 months, burn these people out, and then they've got to do what we say do. And whether that's how it played out or not, that's what happened. The average person, he came home, his home's burnt down. You can check the records. Well, what about the so-and-sos? Well, they were in the lodge, so they put their aprons out front, and Sherman passed on them. They rode the horses up the stairs. In some homes you can go into right now, and you can still see the hoof prints on the stairs. And once again, I'm not trying to stir up anything, but I'm giving a factual history of what happened. And I'm going to compare it to what I see happening today. My biggest fear is something very similar to this is going to happen. You've got 2 billion people in China, and if our markets were to collapse, one of the things to restore order that they would use would be these hundreds of millions of Chinese soldiers. And I think a very similar situation could happen in the United States. And I hope I'm scaring the crap out of people. I'm meaning to. And what I'm not trying to do is trying to stir up, harsh feelings towards Masons. That's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is get it in people's heads. We are only a country of 250 million people. China has 2 billion people. India has 1 billion people. Russia has 300 million people. They control about 50% of the world's population and resources right there in those 3 countries. We need all the doggone nuclear missiles we can get our hands on. Right now, as I speak, China is building aircraft carriers. They can build aircraft carriers so fast it's amazing. And what do you do with an aircraft carrier? You float that sucker around the world, and you say, this is me. Come get a piece of it. Right now, China, to me, that whole situation, China, India, and Russia, they are like a 12-year-old child, a 12-year-old man-child that's fixing to go through puberty, if you know what I'm saying. In this country, we have got to maintain our military. I support our troops. I support what we're doing in Afghanistan. I think we need to be in Pakistan because we don't want China mobilizing their army. But that's just a little story I thought I'd tell. I hope to God the same thing never happens again, but it's one scenario that could go down. You could see the financiers, the people that back the money, send the Chinese troops here. And what would we do then? You know what I'm saying? And another thing that they could be planning, too, is if you accept the new currency, you got to remember something. If they go to a currency that's electronic, they're going to have a way to track you. And it's basically, it's a power. Okay, we wipe the debt off, but we're going to tag you like cattle. We're going to have control of you. And the people that accept this situation, in my opinion, it's going to be the mark of the beast. They're going to be saying, I'm going to get my credit back. They may even extend me a $100,000 line of credit. But at least I won't have to worry about these people calling the house again. You see where I'm going with this?
Sure, Brian.
That's where I think a lot of people are going to fall for it. And what would they get in exchange? I can tell you right now what they get in exchange. They get all power over you, and you would give up your sovereignty as an individual, which is what this country is about. I am a sovereign nation. A.C. Griffith is a sovereign nation. Joe Joseph, John King, we are all sovereign nations. When you do that, you give that up. And what do they gain? They gain what they want, which is all power over everything. And anyhow, I just thought I'd throw that out there. It was on my
man, Brian. I'll tell you what. You're always good for injecting good conversation into the show, and I really do appreciate it. And thank you for the call. Well, Griff, I got news for you. I got a visitor here. I'm going to bring him on. Dr. Waterman, I presume.
Hi, guys.
Can you hear me? All right, there you are. Well, what do you think of the conversation so far, Doc?
Pretty good. You know, one of the questions that you all have been rattling around is how far north. The further from the Gulf, the better. The question is, how much of a refugee should you be? If you have nowhere to go, the thing that we have to remember is that the last thing you can afford to be is a refugee on foot with nowhere to go. And we have to look at this as war, and some of the front lines are different. This particular front line for this operation happens to be the Gulf front. There's casualties that don't even know they're casualties. Unfortunately, we're not fighting a lot of times the physical, we're fighting the mental, and they've dropped leaflets on the front down there from the sky in their helicopters saying, it's okay, drink the water. You know what I mean? So they're convinced that it's okay. And so different, war fronts are going to have some casualties. Not a thing we can do about it. These people are brain dead. They're going to remain brain dead. But, we can make it possible for those that want to leave to go somewhere if possible. And I think that's what's neat about that operation, to take and bring people, out of the Gulf. I just don't know anybody that is. Griff, do you know people that are saying they want out of there?
No. 99% of them are just absolutely brain dead, sitting down there, waiting for it to happen. Doctor, do you believe that the people are getting ill in that area now, every day?
Oh, sure they are. That's going to get worse. The further north you go, the less the impact of that problem will be. There's just no two ways. It's a gradual thing. And you want to be on ground zero, you go to Louisiana. You want to be a little better off, you go over to Florida. If you want to be a little better off, you go up to the Carolinas, or you go to Kansas. The further away that you get, the better. I mean, it's kind of like, closer to the, ground zero you are, the worse you're going to be. There's no real definitive line. Anywhere would be better than being on the coast. Anywhere would be better than right now probably being in the southern half of, or all of Louisiana, since it's not that big of a state. And so they're all going to be affected, but it's not going to be a quick process. It's going to be a slow process. Get this. Think about all the pregnant women down there and what's happening to the fetus and what's happening to that baby inside them with the chemicals in there. I bet you in about, probably it's starting now. They just don't realize it with births. All the birth defects, and some of them will not be visible. They could be system failures. They could be chronic asthma patients as a youth. They could be type 1 diabetics. They could be all kinds of things created by that toxin. So, it's happening, and unless people decide, I think one of the best answers you had was, get the RV. You could do that. And, then there was the question, should I go in debt for it? Well, why not? The deal is this. Will they forgive a debt? They'll never forgive a debt to us people. Never.
No.
But they will cut you a deal. They'll forgive your debt if, and the if would be, with maybe with you accepting a new world monetary unit that can also be spent in the United States, and of course that'll come with all its unilateral attachments. It'll be just you'll be selling your soul for a pot of porridge. That's what it'll amount to. The best thing to do is, get a loan, run like hell, make one payment so they can't prove it, and go. That's what I do. If you can get an RV, that would be wonderful right now. I mean, you'd be living in style in the future, and that's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's hard to say. It's hard to say whether or not that is going to be, well, of course they're not going to forgive you. Just look at the bailout, Doc, Griff, John, the bailout. Wouldn't it have been better to give the people the money and have them pay off their debts, and then that money would go where? Oh, to the banks that have the debts, and then it would go away. But, that didn't happen because that's not what the purpose of it was.
That's right. They didn't want to do that. They did exactly what they wanted to do. And people will look at their actions and try to apply logic, and they will toil with logic. And logic has no part of any of this. They're doing what they want to do.
No, you're absolutely
There's no logic. Right. I agree, Griff. You're right. And so was the guest. He was perfectly on the target. You can't inject money into the banks and expect it to bail out everybody. Here's why. Those people without jobs or with businesses that are failing cannot get loans. So how's the bank going to give them the money? See? So without being credit worthy, whether you're a business or a private individual, that money sits in the bank. All it does is give liquidity to the bank and keeps them from going under. Well, it's not going to do anybody any good if they can't loan it out, see. And so the best thing that could have happened with even a fake, fraudulent fiat script is to give it to the people. And it would have only lasted still. It would have only gotten them temporarily through the problem.
Right. And what it would also do, too, Doc, a byproduct of that would be, for example, you give everybody, I think I calculated it down to, even if you tax it at, say, 40%, people were still getting anywhere from, I wanted to say like $350,000 per citizen, which is good. Don't get me wrong. That's good, pay off the house and everything else. But what happens is when you have a run on Escalades, what happens to the price of Escalades? They go up, they go through the roof. Right. So I mean, you would have a significant amount of inflation associated with that. And I mean, this is all just kind of, I'm looking at this dream scenario where everybody has their Escalades, but that would be a consequence of that. And I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'll play the part of the bankster. Well, you can't because then you would have inflation run amok. Well, you know what? We're going to have it one way or another anyway, so you might as well give the people their Escalade. That's all I'm trying to say.
Sounded like Shylock.
Tis true.
It depends right now on where people place their resources, whether they're going to be able to survive the Gulf, whether they're going to be able to survive a financial collapse, and everybody's going to have a different level of preparedness. So if to have continuity of a community, that could be the most valuable